Hello everybody, in this video we're going to be going over something that's similar to trigonometry, and it's going to be very useful in expressing points in a plane in a certain way that's not necessarily the same way that we usually express points. The way that we usually express points is with two numbers such as 1, 2 in a plane like this, with the origin at 0, 0, and the point would be right here. However, using polar coordinates, we actually would express this in a much different way, where one of these is the distance from the point to the origin, and the other is actually the angle right here. So as you can see, polar coordinates are a much different way of expressing things. Now, the name of the coordinates that we use usually called rectangular coordinates. So let's take a look at what polar coordinates can do. Okay, so right here we have a typical polar coordinate graph, and as we can see right here, we have lots of circles, and each of them gets bigger with a radius of 1. So let's see how we express a point in the polar graph. So let's say we have a point right here. How would we express that point? That point would be expressed as 245. Now, why do we express it as 2 and 45 degrees? Well, we just have that 2 is the distance from the point to the origin, and which is 2, and 45 is the angle right here. So we write it as 45. Now, let's say we also have a point right here. This point would be expressed as 315, which is basically the same. However, if we want to express this in a different way, we can write this actually as 3-45, because it is also negative 45 degrees, technically. And we can also express it actually as negative 3, 135. Now, the reason why we can express it as negative 3, 135 is because we have a point right here, which is 3, 135. And when we do the negative of that, it's just going backwards 3 from the origin instead of going forwards 3 from the origin. So we end up with the point 315. So as you can see, we can write polar coordinates in many different ways. Now, usually we express rectangular coordinates in the form x, y. But for polar coordinates, what variables are there? Well, usually, in general, we just write polar coordinates as r, which stands for radius, and theta. Now, theta comes from trigonometry because it's used a lot whenever we want to express something in the unit circle, which this is a really bad drawing. But I went over the unit circle in another trigonometry video, and you can go check that out later. Now, in future videos, I'll go more into depth about polar coordinates. Today is just an introduction. Now, one of the things we'll be exploring is actually graphs of certain functions. For example, r equals sine of theta. And that graph will be really interesting to see. So hopefully you'll stay tuned and watch my future videos. Thanks for watching.